once we pass 100,000, it's just smooth sailing up to 1 million. And it shows that Bitcoin has that growth potential. So once you cross that threshold into the 100,000 range, I think it's going to first accelerate. So Bitcoin's growth trajectory is not going to be growing at 1,000 every couple of days or dropping by 1,000, but you'll start to go up by 10,000 a day or drop by 10,000 a day. And this is the God candle. And after that, we'll start to see omega candles, which are 100,000 increments daily. So post 100K, that's when things start to heat up and it starts to accelerate. I think 2025 is going to be the year of the omega candle and the year of 1 million Bitcoin.
Samson Mow highlights the importance of Bitcoin crossing the $100,000 mark, describing it as a psychological barrier akin to earlier milestones such as $10,000 or $1,000. Once Bitcoin reaches this threshold, he predicts a shift in its growth dynamics. Price movements will no longer fluctuate in small increments of $1,000, but will accelerate to $10,000 or more daily. This phenomenon, termed the God candle, could pave the way for omega candles, where Bitcoin moves by $100,000 in a single day. This exponential growth trajectory, according to Mow, could culminate in a $1 million Bitcoin by 2025. Such a rapid escalation would signify not just a speculative frenzy, but a recognition of Bitcoin's true value as a global asset. The $100,000 milestone would signal the beginning of Bitcoin's mainstream acceptance and its unstoppable ascent on the path to hyperbitcoinization.
Please take a little time to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. You can also check out our other videos on cryptocurrencies and the overall digital asset space and drop your comments and observations in the comments section below. Everything you do helps with the YouTube algorithm and immensely contributes to the channel's growth. Thanks and enjoy the video.
100,000 or 0.1 M, it's sort of a psychological barrier, much in the same way as 10,000 was a barrier, and 1,000 was a barrier, and 100 was a barrier. So I think once we pass 100,000, it's just smooth sailing up to 1 million. And it shows that Bitcoin has that growth potential. So once you cross that threshold into the 100,000 range, I think it's going to first accelerate. So Bitcoin's growth trajectory is not going to be growing at 1,000 every couple of days or dropping by 1,000, but you'll start to go up by 10,000 a day or drop by 10,000 a day. And this is the God candle. And after that, we'll start to see omega candles, which are 100,000 increments daily. So post 100K, that's when things start to heat up and it starts to accelerate. You're further along that steep exponential growth curve. I think 2025 is going to be the year of the omega candle and the year of 1 million Bitcoin. The definition, hyperbitcoinization, is a parallel of sorts to hyperinflation. It's the point at which we no longer need to convert Bitcoin back to fiat currencies like the dollar or yen, simply because there's no need to. Everyone is using Bitcoin, and most importantly, everyone only wants Bitcoin. So with money, it's typically a zero-sum game. You don't really want an inferior money unless there's a direct need for it. But generally, people want to keep their savings or store value, if they're using fiat currencies, in the strongest vehicle of fiat currencies, which typically right now is the US dollar. But hyperbitcoinization will just be the point at which Bitcoin replaces the dollar, and nobody wants to take the dollar anymore. They want sats for payment.
And why do you think are we so close to that sort of scenario?
Well, there's a number of factors. The current legacy system is failing. If you look at the fracturing of solidarity of the US dollar, you can see the BRICS countries are starting to migrate away. More trade is being done with the Chinese yuan. And most importantly, you can see the US debt is spiraling out of control. We are at $36 trillion right now. Back when your grandparents were, going out to party, they were paying 15 cents for a hamburger. But now you're $36 trillion in debt. So there's a very big problem right now, and most people don't recognize the scale of that problem, but that debt is unlikely to be paid off. Even with Doge or Department of Government Efficiency, there's only so much you can do to trim the fat and to optimize and cost cut. But I think ultimately it's not going to have much effect because the spending is still there. And more importantly, the interest on that debt is compounding. And interest is a miracle. It's a miracle if you're, in the black, but it's the opposite of a miracle, or it's a big curse when you're in the red. Well, the biggest thing that MicroStrategy and Michael Saylor is doing is that they are creating demand for Bitcoin. So I view the ETFs as a legitimization of Bitcoin as an asset class. And they are also a major source of demand. Demand for Bitcoin from the ETFs alone is multiples each day of supply. But MicroStrategy sort of adds gasoline on that fire by creating this Bitcoin reactor, which they can take corporate debt and corporate equity and convert that to Bitcoin, price at a much higher multiple in the future, and effectively pay zero interest rate for that. So they're sort of an accelerant on this fire that's already burning for Bitcoin. The nation state path is also going to follow the same model, both as a reserve asset, but also as a MicroStrategy type play. And I view the Bitcoin bonds that I helped to architect as this sort of MicroStrategy play for nation states. And we do see more and more interest coming back to Bitcoin bonds because it makes perfect sense to issue sovereign debt, which is superior in many ways to corporate debt, to acquire Bitcoin for a strategic reserve or to build a mining operation. Right now, I would say the nation-state Bitcoin developments are very much centered on the US, especially with the election of Trump once again, and the talk of creation of this Bitcoin strategic reserve in the US. So I think this is a catalyst for more change and more adoption of Bitcoin around the world, simply because most people are looking to follow somebody. They don't really want to be the first. El Salvador was the first nation state to really adopt Bitcoin in a meaningful way. But I think it's a small country and they're not being looked at as the meter stick to measure and to decide what to do. Much in the same way as the ETFs. So the ETFs, the US kind of led the way there. Everyone was waiting for approval in the US before they greenlit their own ETFs. And you saw that with the US ETFs coming online and then the Hong Kong ones and then the Australian ones. They're very much watching and waiting. And I think it's the same for meaningful Bitcoin adoption, such as creation of a Bitcoin strategic reserve. But there's already talk at the state level of a few states trying to create it before it's created at the federal level. And I believe this is also prompting more countries around the world to start really sitting down and trying to break down what they need to do and put together a plan.
The U.S. faces a unique challenge in embracing Bitcoin. On the one hand, adopting Bitcoin and building a strategic reserve could strengthen the dollar's position in the short term. On the other hand, as Bitcoin adoption grows globally, fiat currencies, including the dollar, are destined to lose relevance. Mow predicts that Bitcoin could prolong the dollar's dominance for a few years, but ultimately expects civilization to transition to the hardest form of money, Bitcoin. The urgency for the U.S. to act is underscored by the increasing demand from ETF, corporations, and other countries. Any delay in establishing a Bitcoin strategic reserve would result in higher acquisition costs and diminished geopolitical influence.
Decently well defined, I think, in the bill, but at a high level, they committed to stop selling any seized Bitcoin that they have, and there is a plan to purchase. Now, the details of that purchase execution is not really set, but I think that is not something that can be decided until once the bill has really been passed. And the timeline has also been more or less outlined. They want to create a reserve of 1 million Bitcoin. I think Bobby Kennedy was talking about 4 million Bitcoin, but 1 million is still attainable, I think, for the US. But it is going to be very expensive simply because of the MicroStrategy Bitcoin reactor consuming so much Bitcoin fuel in the next few months with their deployment of $42 billion. So It remains to be seen at which price the US will buy at and what their average cost will be, but I just know that things are definitely heating up, and it seems like it will happen because it has to happen. Well, I'm hopeful that it will be passed in the first 100 days because it is a very critical piece of legislation, and time is of the essence, simply because as more countries decide to front run the US, then you compound that with ETF demand, and you compound that with MicroStrategy demand and other corporations, and it just becomes very likely that the price is going to be very expensive if they wait too long. So I definitely think it's better sooner than later. Does Bitcoin prolong the life of the dollar, or does it kill it? I think it can prolong the life of the dollar a little bit, but ultimately all fiat currencies will fail, and this is just because we will gravitate as a civilization to the hardest form of money and the best form of money. So yes, adoption of Bitcoin and building a strategic Bitcoin reserve does strengthen the position short term of the US and by extension the US dollar. But long term, it doesn't really matter. It's just maybe prolonging the life of the dollar for another 5 years, maybe. But as the world moves to a Bitcoin standard, you simply just don't want a fiat currency. Just like today, if I offered you payment for something in seashells, you'd be like, no, I'll take some fiat currency. You don't want the seashells as money. Maybe to decorate your room, but not to store value in, for sure. Bitcoin and gold are very similar. Both things are valuable because we ascribe value to them. Our understanding of gold it's been valuable for a very long time, thousands of years. And now we have this thing called Bitcoin, which has grown up in just 15 years, and it's now seeming to be on the track to overtake gold. So I think at some point the masses have to start to understand that there is a change coming. And I would say maybe it was the previous gold market cap or half the market cap of current gold market cap. So maybe about 400,000 per Bitcoin would be that threshold, I think. So let's call that the Veblen threshold. Once you cross that line, then I think people that hold gold are going to see like this thing that I'm watching in my rearview mirror is approaching very rapidly. Do I still want to have these bars of gold that I can't really easily verify or move? Or do I want this digital gold that's teleportable and verifiable by a Raspberry Pi? I think you start to question that at that 400,000 mark or a 0.4 M mark. And then you start to have people selling gold and moving funds into Bitcoin.
Mow's insights paint a compelling picture of Bitcoin's future. As global economic systems falter under unsustainable debt and fiat currency devaluation, Bitcoin stands as a beacon of hope. Its ascent to $100,000 and beyond is not just a speculative possibility, but a reflection of its inherent value and utility. With nation-states, corporations, and individuals aligning their strategies around Bitcoin, its path to becoming the global standard for money seems inevitable. The question is not if, but when the world will fully embrace Bitcoin.
Please like and subscribe my channel.